Identity.
That's as upbeat and excited as I've heard him.
Yeah.
He sounds like a guy who just scored 3. Guy loves to score.
And you got to be on top of your game to play Berube style, I think, which first and foremost is legs and energy,
Yeah.
right? If you're going to give up the puck, you got to get it back, meaning dump ins. And if there's just that small window where they're just a little off, then it can kind of look like New Jersey.
Like, what do you mean? Like the fast New Jersey Devils?
Yeah, well, like go dump it in, but it's coming back out real quick.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That's the look that we got when they went to New Jersey. And if they're
I thought you meant they look like the Devils.
No,
against New Jersey.
No, I'm just saying
I gotcha.
that Berube's system means if you're going to dump it in and chase it, you better have those legs going. You better be your angles better be perfect. The second guy better not get caught with one pass, right?
Yeah, my complaint with this team right now is I think they often don't leave the next line set up for success because bad dump, they'll go chase it at the end of a shift, and all of a sudden they're coming back the other way, waving guys on the ice. I think better dumps, better changes.
Better changes and like length of shifts too. You can't get caught out there minute and a half, minute 45, 2 minutes, which happened, I think, in Detroit, where they're out there a long time sometimes.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's get
Anything
to
else you want to touch on before we take a break and bring on Electricity?
No, sir.
All right. Take a quick break. As we said, Gord Stellick, former general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, an all-around good guy. Next on Real Kipper and Bourne. All right, as promised, Electricity, our Christmas version of Electricity. Gord Stellick, former NHL general manager, Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, man, are you looking good these days. For those of you that cannot see Gord Stellick on the Zoom, he looks like he's in fighting shape. Is it true that you've got a fight scheduled versus Jeff O'Neill on Netflix coming up? Is that what's happening here between the two of you?
Well, I don't want to give it away yet, but yeah, the O Dog versus the Stell Dog. It's I think it'll be better than the
winner
than
fights
some of the
Jake
other
Paul or
matches
what?
we put out there. So I'm going to try to lay off the poppy treats, and we could have a big announcement soon, Kipper.
Love hearing that. How are you? All these games crammed in, Gord. I was telling the guys that obviously the schedule got kind of closed up a little bit during this past stretch. I think it's to shut down the league for 4 nations for 3 weeks coming up in February. But what have you been seeing out of the Toronto Maple Leafs or in general the games the last few weeks?
You know what? Well, a number of things. And one is that intangible. Well, first of all, the intangible about finding ways to win. And I thought, they had that horrible home game against Ottawa. We're getting killed by Washington, came back and won that game. And here they're looking to go back-to-back losses against 2 teams that they should beat. And they found a way to come back against the Buffalo Sabres. They got some depth scoring from Robertson and Domi. I know, of course, the hat trick from Tavares. So, that's the good part I've seen. And you're right, it's a pretty jammed 82-game regular season. What does it mean in the playoffs? That's always the question. What's lacked in the playoffs is what they're generally best at, and that is scoring goals. So it's hard to figure what the template will mean come playoff time, but I've liked that. Whatever the style was, it's Craig Berube's, a little bit of a different style, a little more of an emphasis on defense. They seem to have a little bit more depth, and they're in first place.
Gord, did you have a moment like I did when Dennis Hildeby gave up a couple of softies to start the game? Well, the tuck one was decent, but still where you're like, uh-oh. Like, what does the Leafs goaltending situation look like to you going forward? Has the Stolarz injury shaken your confidence a bit?
Well, for people old enough out there, it gave me nightmares and memories of Yuri Serha about letting
who can
those
forget
in,
Yuri
right?
Serha?
The whole bench just used to deflate, and you knew you're in a lot of trouble. So it's something we haven't seen so far. And, Justin, first of all, depth-wise, I don't know. This is about as good a goaltending tandem they've had for the halfway point of a season. Saying you're worried about injuries is valid, given, Joe Wall's situation. Look at Freddie Anderson now in Carolina. It started the end with the Leafs and went there. You look at Matt Murray's never really been able to get back still from any kind of injuries. And then Stolarz, he's had problems before, but he'd been the healthy guy. So yeah, it kind of reminds you about what happens if your goalie goes down. It could happen. What you have to do is what Vancouver did without Thatcher Demko for a chunk of it, and that's why you hope you keep the 1-2 depth. But yes, I did have a bit of a post-traumatic stress traumatic memory of the infamous Yuri Surha area.
Gord, it's hard to talk depth without mentioning that the Leafs are flirting with being in the bottom third of scoring. I don't think anybody saw that coming up towards the Christmas break. So we saw last night against a struggling Buffalo Sabre team. Max Domi scores. It looked like they got a lot out of McMahon and Nick Robertson last night. Is that something that you want to see kind of play out, let it breathe a little bit here, or do they really start looking for alternatives outside of their organization to look after some
sure
added scoring?
Add a spice or two by the trade deadline. But Kippy, that's the valid worry about. And even when they had scoring in the regular season, they weren't getting in the playoffs and they weren't getting depth scoring. You're kind of saying, where is our Nick Paul? Who's going to get that big Nick Paul type goal like Tampa Bay did against Toronto? He did for Tampa Bay a few years ago. So I don't know if you want to call it a trade-off, whether that was intentional or what, to be a more complete team. But yes, it is what's let them down every playoff, not just depth scoring, but the big guys scoring. So goals are hard to come by. They're harder to come by in the playoffs. They seem to have in the past found a way to get them in the regular season, but not in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, everything's going well. You're winning, but does the tap get turned off a little too much? It doesn't come back. You got to get Domi going. You got Max Pacioretty could be that guy. Bobby McMahon could be that guy. I don't know if Nick Robertson could be that guy, but somewhere you're going to have to get some depth. There's no question about it, particularly in the playoffs, because you got to rely on more players. And the Florida Panthers, they've leapfrogged past the Maple Leafs, and you really saw last year what the depth in the playoffs meant for them.
Gord, the Leafs really like to play Jake McCabe and Chris Tanev together, which everyone should like. They have a ton of success when they're out there. But that leaves Morgan Rielly sort of once again struggling for a partner. He's a weird guy for partnering reasons. How do you like him with OEL? It doesn't seem like that's going to be a, hey, it's playoffs, game one sort of solution.
Well, first of all, you got to love both Tanev and OEL. I mean, really, and Stolarz. Sure. You really look at, as Nashville struggles with bigger name free agent signings, what Brad Treliving and Leafs were able to do in the offseason. And it's funny, we always talk about how Luke Shen came in. That was one of those great trade deadline pickups that was kind of a quieter one, and for whatever reason really worked with Morgan Rielly. There's always that debate about, how much should the top D be able to do it himself with whatever partner versus trying to find the right kind of partner. So I think, Justin, that's something they could explore come the trade deadline. But it doesn't strike right now. That first pair, and of course the D play a lot of minutes. You can sort of cave in the numbers. They can play more minutes in the playoffs as it goes, but there's no question there's not the same fluidity or stability beyond that number one pair as far as being a cohesive unit. And whether they address it or not, I don't know, but I think they certainly will look to.
Sometimes I watch Morgan and I wonder if he's feeling internal pressure to produce, and I think he's on pace for roughly, Gord, 40 points. Do you think at times he finds himself pushing just from the fact that he's supposed to be producing at $7.5 million a year?
Well, it's funny. We talked about with John Tavares for so often about that number, 11 million. And, you look in baseball, I think Freddie McGriff's a great example. Like some guy, if you ever look at his batting average, one year it's like 50 points higher than every other kind of season. It's sort of say, well, okay, that was a blip. And same with Morgan Rielly when he scored like 20 goals or whatever it was, well, we thought that would be more often the case. And it is important to get as much offense as you can from the defense as well. So it's an interesting one because he's your number one defenseman. I'm very big on him. I'm very bullish on him. Well, Chris Tanev's up there too, but I mean, he's been your number one defenseman, say, for about the past decade. But you don't get the wow factor with him, like the Victor Hedman factor about being the number one stud D. And maybe, Kippy, to your point, and you would know it, being a player that all of a sudden you get that number and there's these kind of expectations, and maybe you're trying to do a little bit too much. I mean, I think one thing with OEL, that he's become more comfortable about. He's not the superstar the Vancouver Canucks thought they were getting or fans thought was supposed to be. Like he's found a comfort zone now, taking a step back and playing that particular kind of role. So I think that's a constructive comment about Morgan Riley at times.
Well, it's interesting.
Instead of a fixed dollar amount. This could result in Marner's cap hit exceeding Matthews' $13.25 million, conflicting with the Leafs' new financial strategy. Ferris is known for driving negotiations to the limit, often taking his clients to free agency. This raises fears that discussions between Marner and the Leafs could drag on until July 1st, giving Marner and his camp all the leverage in negotiations. Another complicating factor is the rising market. LeBrun noted that Mikko Rantanen believes he could secure $14 million per season as a free agent. This sparks the question, could Marner demand even more? And would Ferris take that gamble, knowing the Leafs might opt to move on and sign another player? Marner has made it clear on multiple occasions that Toronto is where he wants to be. As a local player with deep ties to the city, he's expressed his desire to spend his entire career wearing the blue and white of the Leafs. However, staying with the team may require him to accept less than market value, especially if the front office remains committed to its new salary structure. Such a sacrifice could be vital for the team's collective success and to avoid financial issues that have plagued the recent past. While negotiations are still in the early stages, it's evident that Marner's future with the Leafs is at stake. Maple Leafs fans may need to prepare for the possibility of significant changes, but they can also trust in the player's commitment to the city and the franchise to find a compromise. The Maple Leafs' decision to implement an internal salary cap reflects a broader shift in their team-building philosophy. After years of prioritizing top-end talent with hefty contracts, the organization appears determined to strike a balance between superstar contracts and depth throughout the roster. This strategy aims to avoid the pitfalls of past seasons, where a lack of financial flexibility often left the team vulnerable in critical playoff moments. For Mitch Marner, this shift creates a unique challenge. On one hand, his value to the Leafs is undeniable. A consistent top scorer and elite playmaker, Marner has been instrumental in driving the team's offense. On the other hand, his ability to command a salary that rivals or exceeds Austin Matthews could put the Leafs in a difficult position, especially with a potential need to strengthen other areas of the roster. As the 2023-24 season progresses, the Leafs must weigh the potential consequences of sticking to their cap philosophy. Losing a homegrown talent like Marner would undoubtedly sting for fans and the organization alike. However, allowing one player to dictate financial terms beyond the team's structure could hinder long-term success and force painful sacrifices elsewhere. Adding to the complexity is the looming free agency of William Nylander. If the Leafs are to stick to their internal salary cap, they may also face challenges in retaining Nylander, who could command a significant raise. Balancing contracts for both Marner and Nylander within the new framework could prove to be the ultimate test for Toronto's management team. Another factor at play is the team's ultimate goal, winning the Stanley Cup. While star players like Marner and Matthews are crucial, history has shown that depth and balanced rosters often prevail in the postseason. If the Leafs fail to manage their finances effectively, they risk falling short of building a championship-caliber team, even with elite talent. For Marner, the decision to stay with the Leafs might come down to more than just dollars. His connection to the city, the fans, and his teammates could be deciding factors. If he prioritizes legacy and loyalty over maximizing earnings, there's a strong possibility that he'll work with the team to find a deal that benefits both parties. Negotiations will also test Darren Ferris, known for his hardline tactics in securing lucrative deals for his clients. While pushing for top dollar is expected, Ferris may need to weigh the risks of alienating the Leafs management and fanbase. A prolonged stalemate could damage Marner's relationship with the team and its supporters. The Leafs management, led by general manager Brad Treliving, faces a pivotal moment. Treliving's reputation as a negotiator and team builder will be on full display as he navigates this high-stakes scenario. Striking the right balance could solidify his tenure in Toronto, while a misstep might set the team back for years. For Maple Leafs fans, the coming months will be filled with anticipation and uncertainty. Marner's future, along with the team's ability to stay competitive under financial constraints, will likely dominate conversations as the season unfolds. Supporters can only hope that the team's new approach leads to greater playoff success and, ultimately, the elusive championship. In the end, the outcome of these negotiations could redefine the Maple Leafs' identity for years to come. Whether it results in retaining Marner or reshaping the roster, the team's commitment to an internal salary cap signals a clear focus on long-term sustainability. Fans will be watching closely, hoping for a resolution that keeps the team's core intact and their championship dreams alive. As the negotiations with Mitch Marner progress, another layer of complexity is added by the external competition in the NHL market. Teams with more cap space and fewer restrictions could easily present lucrative offers to Marner if he reaches free agency. The Leafs are not only negotiating with Marner but also indirectly competing with other franchises willing to outbid them for his services. One example of this is Mikko Rantanen, whose potential $14 million value on the open market highlights the growing demand for elite wingers. If Rantanen secures such a deal, it could set a precedent that Marner's camp would use as leverage. The Leafs, however, must remain disciplined, as breaking their internal salary cap for Marner could lead to similar demands from other key players down the line. The looming specter of free agency means the Leafs have a limited window to strike a deal. If negotiations drag on into the off-season, the leverage shifts heavily in favor of Marner and his agent. Darren Ferris, known for his strategic patience, could use this to push for maximum value, putting even greater pressure on the Leafs management to make a decision. This scenario also places significant pressure on head coach Sheldon Keefe. Managing a team amid ongoing contract uncertainty can disrupt chemistry and focus. Keefe will need to ensure that the team remains united and focused on their performance, even as the media and fans speculate about Marner's future. Meanwhile, the Leafs core group, including Austin Matthews, Morgan Rielly, and John Tavares, will likely play a role in influencing Marner's decision. The camaraderie among the players and their collective drive for a championship could persuade Marner to accept a deal that aligns with the team's financial structure. On the flip side, the Leafs could explore contingency plans if a deal with Marner doesn't materialize. Trading Marner would be a bold move, but it could bring significant assets in return, potentially bolstering the team in areas like defense or secondary scoring. This option, while unpopular with fans, might be necessary to maintain roster balance. The timing of these decisions is also critical. With the trade deadline months away, the Leafs must assess whether keeping Marner without an extension risks losing him for nothing in free agency. A preemptive trade could avoid the scenario, but it would also signal a significant shift in the team's short-term goals. Fan sentiment will undoubtedly influence the team's approach. Marner is not just an exceptional player, he's a fan favorite and a symbol of homegrown talent succeeding in Toronto. Losing him could lead to backlash, especially if the team struggles in the aftermath of his departure. The broader NHL landscape also plays a role. As other teams navigate their own salary cap challenges, the Leafs can learn from their successes and failures. Organizations like the Tampa Bay Lightning and Vegas Golden Knights have shown the value of balancing star power with depth, offering a potential blueprint for Toronto's future.